You don't believe the things you believe for the reasons you believe. Believe me. Everyone knows groupthink and tribalism are a major problem in modern politics, but most people like to believe that it's a problem of the other side. But groupthink and tribalism isn't a problem of one side or the other. It's a human problem, or at least that's what a recent study from Yale University suggests. Researchers at Yale conducted a series of 4 studies looking at this issue, and they found that more so than your own personal beliefs, more so than what is actually within a policy, what drives how someone feels about a proposed policy is what their group believes. Doubly damning is the fact that this group influence is invisible to the people that it is influencing. It is not clear to someone when they are being influenced by the group versus when they are making up their own mind. Everything feels like making up your own opinion, even when that's not actually what's happening. The studies were structured similarly. We'll dive into the details of the first study and summarize the findings from the later studies. So, in the first study, liberal and conservative college students were invited and told that they would be participating in a memory study. They were being bamboozled, as you do in psychology studies and things like that. And they were broken up into 4 separate experimental groups. The first group was given a series of articles, one of which included an article about a generous welfare policy that was supported by Democrats. In the next experimental group, that same article was about a stringent welfare policy which was supported by Democrats. And then in the third group, that article was about a generous welfare policy again, but this time supported by Republicans. And then finally, they had a fourth article, which was about a stringent welfare policy supported by Republicans. So as you can see, they broke it into 4 groups, where you have 2 separate policies with 2 separate evaluations per policy based on the group identity. After reading through these fake articles, they were tested both on their memory of them and their support for the policy outlined within the article. So here are the results from that study. So here we can see the liberal participants and the conservative participants. We have the mean and the standard deviation. For the moment, let's just focus on the mean. Now, what do all these numbers mean? These numbers are all from a scale that's outlined here at the bottom. The scale is from 1, which stands for being extremely opposed, to 7, being extremely in favor. The key breaking point here is 4. 4 means you're neutral on it. If you're less than 4, it means you oppose it. And if you're higher than 4, it means you support it. All pretty easy, basic, straightforward stuff. So we can see that when liberals were told about a generous policy that Democrats were in favor of, they supported it at a level of 5.22. However, you can see that the liberal participants, when told about a stringent policy, which liberals should not want to support, and told Democrats were in favor of it, they were even more in favor of it. And you can view the inverse effect happening down below when they were told that Republicans were in favor of the policy, where when they were told that Republicans were in favor of the policies, they stood against it. Now, before any conservative viewers go feeling all high and mighty, these results occurred exactly in the reverse way as well, where we found that conservative participants also based their opinions off of the Republican Party, just as Democrats based their opinions off of the Democratic Party. As a matter of fact, what I think is a pretty interesting data curiosity here is that the most liberal respondent group, or rather the group that is most in favor of the generous welfare policy, were conservative participants being told Republicans were in favor of the generous policy. I think that's just an interesting kind of note that jumps out to me. Anyway, this is to say that group identity has a very highly impactful effect on how someone evaluates a seemingly objective policy. As you can see, the results here are damning. The dominant factor in evaluating a policy seems to be group belief, not what one believes personally, and not the actual objective facts on the ground about what a policy contains. Additionally, the follow-on studies addressed several possible objections. First, researchers established a baseline in future studies, seeing how liberals and conservatives would evaluate the policy in the absence of group information. And as you would expect, if they were not told how their group identified, Liberals tended to favor the generous policy, and conservatives tended to favor the stringent policy. They also performed follow-on studies explicitly asking respondents if they could identify where the motivations for their evaluations came from. They routinely found that they could not identify the group influence in their decision-making process. They also attempted to control for knowledge about welfare, but found that it did not matter how knowledgeable about welfare you were, group influence still dominated the decision-making process. And finally, they even went so far as to show both the options side by side in the article to help ensure there wasn't any weird anchoring going on that was biasing the responses. So we're doomed? We're all just group thinkers until the end? Well, not necessarily. First of all, there's two big caveats that we should mention in regards to each of these studies. And the first of all is that the sample size here is small. We're talking only dozens of participants in each given study. So that means we should exercise some caution when extrapolating from the results. Additionally, as these studies were conducted in a university setting, the participants are weird, Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic, which is to say that it's a very weird sample that we're working on here. And before we extrapolate to other folks within America, and especially before we extrapolate to folks around the world, we should consider that this is not necessarily a representative sample. However, those caveats don't let us off the hook entirely. My response to an article such as this is humility. I cannot act like I am somehow exempt from the processes exemplified in this paper. I have to come to terms with the fact that I am susceptible to groupthink. I am highly persuaded by what the groups I identify with believe in, and I cannot see how that impacts my decision-making directly because it happens to an almost subconscious extent. These are all things that force me to engage with my own beliefs with humility because they may not be beliefs I hold for a particularly good reason. Finally, it pushes me to empathize with others. If I see somebody being a group thinker, it's not because they're dumb or they're an idiot. It's just because they're a human being. And so am I. Anyway, that's the video for today. If you've made it this far, please remember to like, comment, subscribe. You know the general shill drill. We have a Twitch stream where we go into much more detail than in videos like this. Please consider checking it out. A link to that is also in the description. In any case, until my next video, have a great day, and as always, peace.